What do you have?
It doesn't
But I know
matter.
it's the same person. Who was your
You're in Brooklyn. Your people is not my people.
Pam, did you like the,
I wanted to know if
the
it's the
cake
same
cubes
person
out?
who's still there.
I did. I had a great time.
So he now.
All right, folks, we're gonna get back to it and move on to phase two. So give yourselves a round of applause for making it through phase one.
Amazing, amazing.
Ed already did the debrief on that, so I'm not gonna waste any time. I'm gonna move us right from phase one into phase two. So the first thing I'll tell you is that when we get to our opportunity to coach the second round, you will be coaching the same person you coached in the first round. And the idea is that you went deep with checking reality, and now we're going to move into phase two, looking at, in the grow aspect, options and grounding and feedback. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, try to set you guys up, and then we're going to go back to coaching and see how you guys are doing with that. So phase two is about exploring options again, grounding and feedback, and it's really about conceptual clarity. Take 1 second and just read that silently if you don't mind. Maria, can I, after you take your picture, can I ask you just to read it for us?
Yeah, conceptual clarity. The emphasis of the conceptual clarity phase of the coaching process is on encouraging clients, employees, to define a range of choices related to their wants and needs, developing a vision of preferred future scenarios, and beginning the process of devising a plan to make the vision real.
Very good, thank you for that. So we've looked at it, we started off our regular piece with coaching, we found out what the topic was, we grounded back and made sure that we were clear on what the topic was that that person wanted to discuss. And now we've started to check the reality and making sure that they're clear on what it is, and also that you're clear on what it is. And that's where you ask those questions. You might even ask the question of, I just want to make sure I'm clear. Can you just rewind with me exactly what it is that we're talking about and what you want to work on for today's session? And then once you know for sure what it is and you've helped check reality, and remember there's two reasons why we check reality. One is so that we know more about it as a coach, but the second one, which is even more important, is that we're here for our client's agenda, right? We're here to benefit our client. So the second reason why we check reality is to make sure our client is clear on what they're saying. So I always bring it back to the issues that I had with the UFT as a principal. I'm sorry, Serge. And you know, I might not always be in a real space when I talk about them because it brings up angst, it brings up anxiety. I'm not using my curious brain, I'm using my anxious brain when I talk about them. And my coach can sometimes ask me questions that bring me down. Like, everybody's not out to get you in your school. You know what I mean? Like, you know, or the question part is everybody really out to get you in your school? You don't have any teachers that are on your side? And those things help me check reality and kind of go. Does that make sense with everybody?
Yes.
So once we do that and we're fully geared on checking reality, we start to look at this and we start to really ask the client, you know, what can they do about this? We know what they want to talk about, we know what they want to work on, and now we find out just how much power or how little power they actually have in getting something done. So what is the range of choices? We call that options. How many options do we try to get out of with the Inspired 3 program? What do we try to get? How many options?
Three.
Three, at least three, right? So we want to push them on that and kind of push them through. And once we get the options, it's our job then to help them, what we call grounding and feedback, and giving them the kind of questions that are going to help them determine which option is going to be best for them. So as it's written here, they're developing the vision. We're kind of asking for that in phase one, like what do you really want to get out of this? But in this phase, with these options, they're starting to develop a vision of what they really want to get to. So if we go back to the piece I said before with the gentleman who wanted help on time management, once I grounded in feedback, I found out that he really wanted help again on getting the meetings on time, etc. So then we started talking about, well, what are your options? What can you do? And then helping him develop a vision of what I really want to get to is a place where I'm never late for a meeting. I want to get to a place where people don't think of me as being that person that's always late. That was really his piece and going from there. So once we do that, then we start to help them devise a plan, go from there. All right. So in this case, again, we are exploring options and grounding and feedback. So if you see this on the test tomorrow, as Ed talks about, with GROW, what's the O stand for in GROW? These are the two components, but it's not just options and feedback, even though they're highlighted and bolded. It's really exploring options, which is what we're trying to do. We're exploring the options, and then we're trying to ground them in feedback and kind of go from there. So what we want to do here is look at the work that's involved with phase 2, and it's very simple. With exploring options, again, we're looking at payoffs and consequences. We have to give our client the opportunity to determine that there are some consequences that could come with some of the options that they have. And we talk about those things, right? How many possible solutions, right? We ask about pros and cons. We ask them for other things dealing with criteria, right? And the outcome is for them to come up with the choices that they feel might be beneficial to them moving forward. The other side, and this is the part that I've told you guys again and again, is the piece that we see people kind of going down on, and it's one of the reasons why we do this part and have a whole section that's on phase 2, is the grounding and feedback side, right? So how do we help them get through what they need to get through? Unfortunately, what happens is, most of the time, we tell somebody, oh, the easiest way to do it is just, what are the pros and cons of that option? Yes, asking somebody the pros and cons can work in a lot of areas, but it doesn't work for everything. So grounding and feedback is not just asking what are the pros and cons, it's asking questions that are gonna get them to really understand where they are, right? So back to my client who tells me that the real deal is that he doesn't wanna be known by other people as being that person that's late all the time. If he gives me an option of, well, I'm gonna have my secretary let me know a half hour before my meeting so I can wrap up whatever I have to do, then I can start saying, well, I can say, oh, what are the pros and what are the cons, but that already kind of sounds like a pro. But the piece I might ask him about is your secretary always gonna be available to do that for you? What if you're in a meeting and your secretary can't get to you? What if your secretary's absent? Do you have a fallback plan for that? You start to ground them in feedback to make them really think about the option, and is that the best option for them? And if they're doing 3 different options, then our goal is to help them get through this section and come up with one thing that they want to work on, okay? Sometimes they may have more than one, but we really try to ground them on what's the best way. So if somebody's giving me 3 options, again, I love that question, well, can you rank those options for me? That's a little easier than which one do you want best. They're already going to tell you which one they like based on that. Think about them. Which one do you think, how would you rank them? You know, oh, okay, I think this one's number 1 or whatever, and then going from there. We help them also with making sure that they will be able to progress and do whatever it is the option is, because there's no sense in making a plan on something that's crazy, right? So I'll leave the person anonymous, but somebody talked about, oh, I'd really like to get rid of my custodian, right? Like, do you have the ability to do that yourself? Do you have the ability to do that? Being somebody that's already been through it, the answer is no, right? There's a whole lot of steps you have to take. But if that's an option, I have to make sure that it's something that is reachable and obtainable, and help them with questioning to make them make up their own mind. Now, they may at the end say, yeah, this is what I want to do, and I'm going to do everything I can. You know, I don't fight with my clients, but my job is to just open their mind and kind of go from there. Does that make sense for everybody? Mm-hmm. Great. All right. And again, it's about giving them a broader perspective on the context, and support that with evidence, right? So what evidence do you have that's going to help you make this? What evidence do you have that this will actually be a plan that you can do and being able to go from there? So really quick, I'm going to follow Ramon's lead. We're going to do a Q storm. I want you to stop and think about what some good option questions would be, and then we'll just go around really quick and hit a few people to find out what you guys have. So I'll give you a minute for that. What are some good option questions? What do you think? Now, I'm sorry, last part. You just finished doing a check in reality piece with the person that you're dealing with. What might be an option question that you want to bring into our next phase development? Uh-oh, they hired Reggie Lando as the coach of the New York Knicks.
All right, did you throw your hat in the ring?
Yeah, I threw my hat in. I threw my hat in Denver too, since we work out in Denver. I don't want to move to Denver, but I can go there for 6 months.
You can zoom the coach.
I'll coach Joker for 6 months. I can do that. Okay, about 30 seconds. See if you can add it at least 1 or 2. And when you guys get home tonight, this may be a piece that you also just start to think about. Again, this grounding and feedback questions. What might be some good questions I can have that I bring into tomorrow? All right, we're gonna go with my evens, and we'll start off actually to my right. And I'll ask Sherry Ann, can you go? You're my number 2. Can you give us one option question?
Who can help you with
Okay,
what you came up with?
very good.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Christina?
What would be a pro and a con if you decide to take this route?
Very good. Okay. Pam?
I stole yours. Can you rank these options for me?
There you go. Very good. You can, it's not stealing.
What are some options that you have that can help you meet your goal?
Excellent. Excellent.
I would say, who could help you, and how, and who else?
Okay. Very good. Maria?
What other resources could you draw upon to help you?
Very good. Serge?
What are some different ways you could approach this?
Okay. Very good. Very good. All great option questions, right? So if you didn't have some of those, jot them down and keep them in your head. And we'll go from there. And I think it's time for Ramon. Right. Oh, you up next? Sure.
So, I'm the evidence guy. We show this one just because of this idea that we can use this to help us with evidence, right? Think about what is the evidence, why is that evidence, who can help you with the evidence, and why are we even talking about evidence? Why is this powerful for options? Sure, Rohani. Thank you for raising your hand. What do you think?
I think the evidence, or who can help with that would then solidify the choice that they've made.
Right, because I'm your thought
Grounds
partner.
it grounds them in that feedback and that evidence that they're looking for.
And you have a perspective,
It answers the who.
and your perspective may not be real, right? So how do we know that? If I ask you again if your perspective is real, what are you going to say? Sure, it's real. Sure, it's real. Right? How do we? What do you think, Soledad? Why evidence?
Why evidence?
Right. Or feedback. I say evidence, but really feedback
Feedback is,
around the options, around whether
well,
those are
it
good
grounds
options.
them in reality. Like, you're gonna explore an option that may not even be a possibility.
Now, the reason also why we're taking time with this is because you probably have figured out we've done this. This is the 7th time around, right?
This is where
The first 6 times,
Yeah.
people did not focus on this because they would focus a lot on options because we're good with that, right? But this is the hard part. It's like, so how do we really know there's a real option? And even when we get into a discourse with each other and we start going down this road, that's when people are like, that's when you get the, oh yeah, I didn't think about that. Oh, that's another view, I didn't think about that. So let's do a quick Q storm. You're gonna think about what are ways that you can ask about evidence, feedback in your question, right? So what I want you to think about is after you've given 2 or 3 options, we want 3 or more, I should say, what would be a good way of getting feedback? And yes, MBI, but your clients tomorrow, we don't know if they have MBI, right? So that's why we're not gonna go down that road, but the idea that MBI is a feedback mechanism as well. What are other feedback mechanisms? What are other things that somebody comes to you, Sherry, and says, you know, I'm an amazing principal. I can't believe my superintendent could have an issue with me. What could be a feedback measurement or instrument that I can use to say, well, let's look at this instrument to see if that's the same evidence.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Simone. What evidence supports your perspective?
What evidence supports your perspective, right?
Right. Or data.
Or data. And what other? So evidence is one. It could be something physical like an evaluation. But what else is evidence? Or what else is feedback?
Your instincts, no?
Could be insights as well. That is. It's anecdotal, but it is a form of feedback. Anything else?
How should that look to you, or how do you want that to look?
How do you want that to look?
But how would you the question was, I can't believe my superintendent gave me an ineffective when I believe that I'm an effective principal. So what is your definition of being an effective principal?
Right. Or what evidence do you have supports that?
Supports,
All right. Yeah. All right. I think you feel amazing.
that wasn't from chat.
Supports that you're an effective principal, or that you're
Hopefully they're saying positive. I'd be nervous to say I'm a really ineffective principal. I can't believe they think I'm effective. That's a problem there. Any other feedback you can think of? Any other?
What assumptions are you making about, that falls into that, right?
Assumptions? What else?
Give me receipts.
Observations, right? Observations is another one, right? So that, and again, we're looking at all feedback mechanism where you think it's like a research dominant feedback mechanism or anecdotal. All of those matters. Michael Fuller, one of the best-selling authors, 90% of his stuff is anecdotal. Right? It's not research-based. He's taking other people's research-based and making something, but you think everything he says is amazing, don't you? Because it's all about perspective, right? So let's think about that. All right, so we're writing down questions still. 1 minute. Let's try to get at least 2. And if you want an A+, you want a rubric, A+, 3 questions. You get 3 feedback questions, you get an A+.
So we're doing 3.
Not a test, just on our class.
Okay.
3 questions, that's what you're aiming for.
So it depends. So you can clarify. So I'm gonna write that one.
This is phase 1. This is phase 2.
This is good. That's good.
This is phase 2?
No, that's
This-
okay. So if you want
This is phase 1, right?
This whole sheet
This phase one?
is phase, I mean, because this could be in phase 1.
Oh,
Can't relate.
so these weren't.
No, it's just,
Okay, gotcha, yeah.
right now we're just going into exploring options.
Oh.
That's what's phase 2. That's good.
Okay.
That's why we're practicing.
Okay.
And grounding and feedback, that's this part. Rachel did the options. That's right. I like to reinforce. All right, with 30 seconds.